Honestly, the hearts and minds of the American people today are thinking a lot about it being the weekend where we remember the life and work of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. One of my favorite quotes from Dr. King was, "Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy." That's exactly what President Trump is calling on the Congress to do. Come to the table in a spirit of good faith.
There's a moment right before the vice president started that thoroughly preposterous riff comparing Donald Trump's wall shutdown strategy to MLK, where he glances down at his notes and looks like a diver taking a peek off the platform to the water far below. Am I really going to do it? Well, he did it, and I guess the nicest thing you could say about it is points for chutzpah, I guess. Because no, Mr. Vice President, the point of making real the promises of democracy was not bringing different sides together to cut legislative deals for a wall. It was bearing moral witness through agitation and direct action that forced people to be uncomfortable, to polarize a population to either defend or abandon the evil of the status quo. There were people who took the come to the table in good faith approach, but they were quite literally the people King was arguing against. His famous letter from a Birmingham jail, in which he so persuasively makes the case for his approach of nonviolent direct action, was a direct response to an open letter from local white clergy in Birmingham chastising his approach to achieving desegregation in that city. The pastors who signed the letter were not ardent, outright segregationists and white supremacists. They were, at least they said, sympathetic to King's goals. It was just the way he was doing it that was wrong. We recognize the natural impatience of people who feel their hopes are slow in being realized, they wrote, but we are convinced that these demonstrations are unwise and untimely. Instead, the clergy called for honest and open negotiation of racial issues in our area between citizens of our own metropolitan area, white and Negro, meeting with their knowledge and experience of the local situation. Or, in other words, come to the table in a spirit of good faith, as Pence put it. You know, every MLK Day, I go back to that letter from the clergy because it's a reminder of how seductive the language of social peace and comity and compromise are, even in the face of the most obviously violent evil. I mean, you hear an awful lot of that format of critique today about whichever group it is, from Black Lives Matter protesters to trans activists to young people fighting to end fossil fuel use and save the planet from warming. That sure, what they're doing is admirable, but they're just going about it all wrong. It's worth asking ourselves on this day, will history view you and me in this moment as standing on the side of the Birmingham clergy saying go slow and don't rock the boat, or on the side of King and his vision? Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.